You can do better than that. To be fair, of all the elite quarterbacks in the NFL, Joe Burrow is the least accomplished. Getting better. 1,000,000%. I 1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them. There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome in the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. Of course, happy Friday. Hope you've all had a great week. I hope you have some fun plans lined up for the weekend. But we have a ton to get into here today. It's going to be pretty Cincinnati Reds heavy because a lot has happened today when it comes to your Cincinnati Reds. First off, the Cincinnati Reds avoided disaster yesterday by not losing to the St. Louis Cardinals, right? Like you win game one. That was a 5-6 game win streak. And then you have the rain out a couple nights ago. They postponed it till the next day. You have a day-night doubleheader, and the Reds get pummeled in both of those, right? They lose game one and game two by combined, or games 2 and 3, but the 1 and 2 of the doubleheader, they lose both those games by a combined 15-1. Morale was low. It seemed like the vibes were down. It's just not good energy. You add that up with the absence of Austin Hayes when he was scratched in the lineup a few nights ago. There just wasn't a lot of positive momentum for this team. And what I really was concerned about was this point last year. This time last year, the Reds were also 16-13. When they were 16-13, from that point on, they would go on to lose 8 straight games. Within that same stretch, including another week's worth of games, they ended up dropping 11-12. It was from that point on, the wheels just fell off. And it was a time last year at 16-13 where it felt like right now where, the Reds might have something here. And I do truly 100% believe that the Reds have something here. But when they lost both of those games by combined 15-1, I felt it was very similar to last year when they were 16-13 when the wheels fell off. I thought the wheels were falling off. And I was nervous about yesterday's game against the Cardinals because I thought for sure the Reds are going to screw this up, drop 3 or 4 against the Cardinals. Then you're doubting yourself heading into a Nationals team that's just a couple games under 500. They're still right there in that same pace as you. That's a losable series. Then you go on the road to take on Atlanta next week. The Braves, they're coming back to life. That's a losable series. The Astros, that's a losable series. I looked at this stretch of games and thought it was a very dangerous little window, and still very well can be, I might add. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, the Cincinnati Reds found a way to prevail. One thing that I did point out on Off the Bench earlier, and just how I kind of view this situation, I've been waiting for the Reds to do something to kind of show me that what's the Terry Francona effect. And I believe that Cardinals series truly was, especially the way they bounced back yesterday. I truly believe that what we saw yesterday was that Terry Francona effect. That calming veteran presence in that clubhouse to get a young lineup or a young clubhouse to buy in and truly take it day by day, series by series. I truly feel like Francona had his hands all over the way the vibe of yesterday's game went, the way that the team responded. You got pummeled 15-1 in both games combined the day before, and then you respond a 9-1 win early, yesterday against the Cardinals. The Cardinals aren't a good team. They're going to finish near the bottom. They're going to battle it out with the Pirates for one of the worst records in the National League Central. But that doesn't matter because a lot of times what the Reds battle is themselves. We could talk about their opponents. We could talk about how bad a teams that they've played to this point. But a lot of times we've been watching the Reds battle against themselves. And the Reds usually beat the Reds. But the Reds were able to not beat themselves yesterday, and I believe that's the first time where I've truly felt like there was a Terry Francona impact as far as getting that clubhouse to buy in. The other thing, too, it's not just Terry Francona. The reason that win was so impressive yesterday is because I also feel like that's the first time we saw a little bit more of an experienced group, a veteran-led group. I don't think we truly put value in the experience of the players that the Reds added in the offseason. When you think about the fact that they went out and got Austin Hayes, when you think about the fact that they went out and got a Jose Trevino, when you think about the fact that they went out to get a Gavin Lux and a Brady Singer, what do a lot of those guys, what they all have in common is they're all veteran, experienced players. Brady Singer is a Major League Baseball pitcher. He's not a guy that's trying to learn the league and figure out the league and learn on the go like we were watching with Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo and a lot of insert name here. Hunter Green, as we saw him take that big step last year of how to pitch at a high level. but we've yet to see him be comfortable enough to know how to go out there and be a part of a winner. Same thing with Nick Lodolo. Same thing with Andrew Abbott. These are veteran, experienced players. Nick Martinez is a veteran, experienced player. We saw that experience come into play yesterday, and really with this clubhouse in general. There's a few opportunities. There's a few moments throughout the first month of the season where I felt like the Reds could have unraveled. I felt like they could have unraveled early with the way that opening series against the Giants went, and things did start to look like they were unraveling a bit. Obviously, they weren't very good against the Giants. They had that big offensive outburst against the Rangers in game one, and then 3 straight games where they lose 1-0. They dropped 3-4 the series against the Brewers. And then from that Brewers series on, who do they have after the Brewers? Yeah, it was San Francisco. You go on the road, you take on the Giants, and you take 2 of 3. And then from there, that's when we saw this team start to really roll. Obviously, they sweep the Pirates, right? You sweep Baltimore. You go and you take care of business against Colorado and do what you're supposed to there. I think that the Reds have done a very good job where there's been multiple times throughout the season where the season could snowball and get away from them and shoot themselves in the foot the way we've seen them do famously in the month of April so many times in recent history. That's not the case. Couple games above 500 to close out the first month of the season. I said it before. I was like, man, look, the only goal you should have, I mean, you should have a lot of goals. You should have bigger goals. Win the division, win a World Series. Win 15 games a month. 90 wins is that sweet spot to make the postseason. 90. Not 86, not 85, not 82, not 88, 90. 90 is at least the win total that will give you the opportunity to get to the postseason. That's what the Reds have to do. And to do that, it's as simple as 15 wins a month. It's just simple math. 15 wins a month. 1 month into the season, the Reds won 16 games in the first month of the season. They kick off the month of May with the big win yesterday already. 14 more to go. Hopefully they get more. I just think that this team is truly good enough to make the postseason. I think that they have a lot of pop up and down this lineup. This pitching staff is unreal. I mean, is it the best in baseball? No, but it's honestly, when you talk about a homegrown, when you think about what, I know Rogers, they went out and got in the offseason. I know Brady Singer they traded for. Martinez is a vet. But overall, when you look at Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo to Andrew Abbott, and Rhett Lauder is going to be, called back up soon, of course. And you look at the bullpen, you look at your Graham Ashcrafts, you look at a lot of these guys that the Reds have traded for and developed in their system and called up, and they've been a part of it. Like, the Reds have built something that I think is pretty cool. And I think that that's what makes it a little bit more special, is when you build something the way that the Reds have and it all starts to come together to the point where all you do have to do is start dropping in some veteran free agent pieces. And that's kind of what's happening now. I think that what we're seeing with this pitching staff right now is pretty damn impressive. And it's not just the rotation. The rotation is getting all the love. It's the bullpen that deserves to get a lot more love and attention than what they've been getting at this point. I mean, the bullpen for the Cincinnati Reds, how about this? 35 consecutive batters retired by this Reds bullpen right now. That's the streak that they're in the midst of. I mean, Suter throughout this stretch, Suter went just under 4 innings of work. Again, 2 strikeouts. That's it. Striking and not giving up any hits. You look at Richardson, who came in, Lyon Richardson, 3 innings pitched, struck out 2, gave up 0 hits. Ashcraft came in and was throwing upper 90s. I mean, even going into the triple digits on a few occasions. Ashcraft, 3 innings pitched, 4 strikeouts. Rogers, a 1 inning pitch, no hits, and a strikeout. And then Luis May, we got to see the debut of him yesterday. My gosh, he has some sick stuff. 1 inning pitched, gave up no hits, and a strikeout. They have retired 35 consecutive batters. When you get production like that from your bullpen, on top of the production that you're getting from the rotation, and the way that we saw, especially, and we saw it a lot with Suter and Richardson, when we saw Chase Petty just get, absolutely blitzed out of the ballpark, he gave up 9 runs himself 2 nights ago. The bullpen came in, didn't even give up a hit the rest of the way. And not only did they not give up a hit the rest of the way, they 8 innings. Richardson and Suter 8 innings, both of them getting over 3+ innings of work in, and they didn't have to go deep into the bullpen. They used 3 total pitchers. You lost 9-1. You gave up 9 runs and just under 3 innings of work from Chase Petty. I thought, oh man, that ain't good. You've played you're about to play a stretch of 3 games in about 36 hours. This team's going to be tired and beat up. Hopefully you get something out of your rotation. Man, I think the Cincinnati Reds have gotten a lot from this bullpen. I think the bullpen deserves more love than what they've been getting because the rotation's been so good and it's led by Hunter Green. And it's just one of those things where they deserve that attention. But this pitching staff has just been phenomenal for the Cincinnati Reds here so far, a month and some change into 2025. All right, I'm Justin Kenner. The show brought to you by our friends over at Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits, of course. The Reds have been an interesting roller coaster of a story up and down. I think we're seeing, as I mentioned, the veteran leadership kind of step up. Chase Petty comes in, gets rocked, and the veteran leadership of Suter and Richardson and some of the other veteran guys, stepped up. They had to do it, right? They didn't win that game, but the reason they won last night was because of the work that the bullpen put in the night before. We're seeing veteran guys step up, and we saw it yesterday. The Bats were asleep for both games 2 and 3 and then woke up to pummel the Cardinals to prevent losing the series 3-1. They come out with the split, and now they have some momentum as they're taking it into the National Series. Game 1 tonight, a little bit of an early start time, 6:10 the first pitch. Hunter Green going to be on the mound. If you haven't had a chance, go take a look at the lineup. The Reds lineup is one of the more interesting lineups of the season. No Austin Hayes, who went on the IL today. We're going to talk about the impact of that. Austin Hayes to the IL. Tyler Stephenson, who was on the IL in the midst of obviously a rehab stint, he's off the IL. He'll make his season debut tonight for the Cincinnati Reds. But the big question I had about Tyler Stephenson's return is how was Terry Francona going to handle the catcher position? Who was going to catch? Who was going to be the odd man out? Well, we kind of got that answer, at least a small answer, as we sit here tonight heading into Game 1 against the Nationals. We have a ton to dive into. It's the Justin Kenner Show presented by Frickers. We'll be right back.
Online at frickers.com.
All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. So we talked about how the Reds rebounded yesterday to get that big win. I still think it's a big win over the Cardinals. I mean, you got to think about the direction that this season could have gone in had they dropped that game last night and then dropped 3 straight, dropping 3 or 4 to the Cardinals after going on a 6-game win streak. I think that's really where the season could have unraveled. And who knows what happens in this national series, but I think when you have the national series that's getting underway with Hunter Green on the mound, I think that they can continue on with this momentum. Of course, there's a lot of key guys in this lineup that are continuing to hit. They get one key piece back in the lineup, which we'll talk about coming up around the corner. But there's going to be one major contributor that is going to be out tonight and possibly for the foreseeable future, and that's Austin Hayes. Austin Hayes, it was announced earlier today that he will be heading to the IL with a hamstring strain. And I know he's only played in a small sample size of games. He's only played in 13 games. He's only played in a little amount of games, but he has made such a huge impact that this does totally feel like a kick in the gut when it comes to how this team was trending offensively, because he was pacing the way. Look, this is a guy that is hitting 365 in his limited games thus far, hitting 365. He went 5 home runs, 13 RBIs in only 13 games. Small amount of games, a ton of impact. I think of all, like, is he the Reds' best hitter? No, I think he's their most impactful hitter, because of his ability to, for one, knock the ball to the ballpark, but the timing of when she gets these hits as well, and the way he drives runs in. I mean, that's exactly the kind of piece you wanted to hit behind Elly De La Cruz. You want Elly to get on base, and he does. He was running a 12-game hit streak for the longest time. You want guys behind him that are going to advance the runner, knock him in, and that's what Austin Hayes does. That's what Austin Hayes does. And when you compound that with the fact that Gavin Lux is one of the best hitters, statistically, technically, the best hitter in the National League at this point, which is wild. The Reds, it's a big loss. I don't know how long he's going to be on the IL. I have not come across any kind of update as far as that's concerned when it comes to Austin Hayes. But a little bit ago, I know that Charlie Goldsmith had come on and basically kind of shared the fact that, hey, at this point, yesterday, Hayes tested out his hamstring pregame, but wasn't running at full speed. He has made such a big difference in this lineup this year, and the Reds are obviously a different team without him. And that's why they decided to place him on the IL. I know that he had gotten an MRI. I don't know what the results were. I don't even know if this is a 10-day IL stint, a 15, a 60. I have no clue. I don't even know what the severity of this is, how long he'll be out. But the problem is when it comes to the Cincinnati Reds, I think we can all agree none of us trust the Cincinnati Reds when it comes to handling key injuries. You remember last year, a blister. Keep in mind, like we all get like a blister on our hand. You got a blister on your hand. You do yard work, you mow, you get a blister. Those calluses break, right? Like you get a blister on your hand. 1 week, 2 weeks, it's gone. You move on with your life, right? How does Nick Lodolo get a blister and miss the entire season because of a blister? I don't trust the Cincinnati Reds. Spencer Steer has a bum shoulder that dates back to last season. They don't do anything with it in the offseason. He starts the season not participating in spring training on a limited throwing program, limited at-bats during spring. Starts the season, what we thought would be on the IL. Hell no. He's over here at Dayer Ballpark participating in the final spring training game of the season. And remember that little Reds exhibition to celebrate 25 years of Dragons baseball? Great idea. Very, very fun for the fans. Why the hell was Spencer Steer out there? I don't trust the Cincinnati Reds. You remember Christian Encarnacion Strand? It's just a little minor injury. He still played through that minor injury, that minor injury that really wasn't a big deal that he could play through, ended up knocking him out for the rest of the season. Once again, I don't trust the Cincinnati Reds. So when they call it just a minor hamstring strain, excuse me if I'm a little skeptic, if I'm a little doubtful about what your prognosis is when it comes to this. I don't trust the Cincinnati Reds, and I don't know if you guys do either. I just feel like their handling of injuries is it's poor. I think it's done very poorly, and I really hope that it's not a long IL stint for Austin Hayes. Again, Austin Hayes to the IL, hitting 365 on the season, 13 RBIs, 5 home runs in only 13 games. honestly has been the Reds' most impactful hitter, on the season. Obviously, I think Gavin Lux has been their best hitter. I think Trevino has been their most consistent hitter. I think the most impactful hitter. And I'm splitting hairs with all of these, but that's just how good a lot of these guys have been in this lineup. And ironically enough, Gavin Lux, Austin Hayes, Jose Trevino, all offseason additions by Nick Krall and the Cincinnati Reds. It's been a phenomenal first month of the season. But they're 17-15, 2 games above 500. They trail the Cubs by 2 games in the Central. They're a half game back in the wild card, looking up at a team like the Phillies, and they're right there with the Diamondbacks and the Atlanta Braves, who they're going to face next week. The Reds, for them to ultimately achieve their goal of winning at least 15 games a month, getting in that 90 win range, the only way that happens is if this team is relatively healthy. They've been getting great production from their rotation. The bullpen has been equally as good and impressive. But all we talk about is this offense. We talked about how bad it was to start. Now we've talked about how good it is, still overshadowing the praise that should be going towards the pitching. And I almost thought we were going to revert back to talking about how poor it was because of what we saw in the 15-1, games 2 and 3, where they got dominated by the Cardinals. I don't know what to make of this Austin Hayes injury. I hope it's not a long absence. He's already missed a few games, going to miss tonight, possibly going to miss this whole series, hoping he's not going to miss that road trip coming up. Because look what the Reds have. Look, the Nationals, they're a 14-win team. The Reds, you can't sit there and say that they're significantly better than the Nationals. They're going to compete. You're not going to sweep them. And maybe if you do, great. But look what's coming up after this national series, right? You're going to go on the road. You got to play Atlanta, not 3 times, but 4. A 4-game series at Atlanta, 3-game series at Houston. Next week is a huge week for this Cincinnati Reds team. How do they've handled adversity pretty well. That's what I was talking about earlier. You could tell Terry Francona has a pretty good grip and has a pretty good pulse of this young/experienced group. You could tell that experience coming into play when there's been some moments throughout the season already where it could have snowballed and gotten away from them already, and they've bounced back and been able to prevail and get some big wins and not let what happened yesterday impact today. You get shut out 3 straight times, 1-0. That could have derailed the whole season. It didn't. They only got better from there. So a big week coming up, but they have to take care of business against this Nationals team, and they're going to be without Austin Hayes for at least this series. Hopefully they get him back relatively soon. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. So with that being said, they lose Austin Hayes to the IL, but coming off the IL is Tyler Stephenson. Tyler Stephenson will be in the lineup tonight in Game 1 against the Washington Nationals. And really trying to figure out how I feel about this as well. The lineup tells so many stories for how this is going to be managed moving forward, and I love it. I will get to the lineup in a moment. But my favorite thing about Terry Francona is his old school approach to managing this ball club. I love the fact that he has established roles with guys. I remember doing this show with Schlemmer back in the day. One of his biggest pet peeves with David Bell, and not just David Bell, but the way managers manage the game today, is the constant lineup changes. And not just like a player or two. You're going to have a different lineup, lefty, righty, we get that. But at the end of the day, it was like every single day, it's like you drew names out of a hat to see who was going to hit where. It would drive him nuts. It drives me nuts. And I've talked to so many players throughout my time working in this business who have said that they prefer knowing when they go to the ballpark every day, they want to know what their role is with the team, and not role as in whether they have a spot on the team. Their role as in, okay, I'm the leadoff hitter. All right, I'm going to, hit in the cleanup spot. All right, I know I'm going to live in the bottom third of the order. Okay, I know I'm going to be hitting behind Ellie. Like, that stuff matters. Ellie De La Cruz has not hit anywhere but that 3 spot all season. TJ Friedel has not hit anywhere except that leadoff spot all season. There's another guy that has not moved from his spot in the lineup all season, and that is Jose Trevino. And to me, the most fascinating thing about that is Jose Trevino, when you look at what he's been able to do this season, the fact that he is the best hitting catcher in baseball right now, the fact that he is the best hitting catcher in baseball, one of the best hitters on this roster right now, I find it fascinating that when you look at his numbers and you look at what he's been able to do in 2025, he's hitting 325, 9 RBIs, 3 home runs on the season. Terry Francona has looked at Jose Trevino, knowing he's hitting 324, knowing that he could honestly contribute to the top half of the order easily, opts not to move him from that spot in the order because he's comfortable there. There's a rhythm there. He's hitting 324 there. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Terry Francona is big on rolls, and if it's not broke, don't fix it. If a guy is rolling, let's not mess with anything that can alter the psyche of the batter or the player in general. Pitcher, hitter, position player, don't matter, right? That's what I love about Terry Francona. However, I was very curious to see what was going to happen when Tyler Stephenson came back. I got into a debate with the guys on Off the Bench the other day. I truly believe that as long as Jose Trevino is hitting at this pace, at this level, as long as he's hitting close to 300 baseball, I do not think that the primary catcher should be Tyler Stephenson, and I don't care who disagrees. This team, the margin for error is so slim. I know other key guys are hitting up and down this lineup right now, but I don't think anyone truly believes that Gavin Lux is the best hitter in Major League Baseball. His numbers have him right up there with the best hitters. Is he going to be able to sustain that? I hope so, but I don't trust that. But we're going to ride that wave while we can. Right? Austin Hayes. I know he's not going to hit 365 all season, but damn it, like we knew he was capable of hitting the ball to the ballpark. We knew he was a near 280 hitter to begin with when he was with the Orioles. He's a former all-star outfielder. The bottom line is we know he can do that. It's just whether he can stay healthy or not. The margin for error is slim, and Jose Trevino has been your most consistent player from the very beginning. When Tyler Stephenson comes back, and he is back, and he is in the lineup tonight, who was going to be catching? And I love what Terry Francona did. Jose Trevino is in the lineup tonight. He is batting 8th, and he is behind home plate. He is catching. Jose Trevino, to me, as I've been saying from the very beginning, when he's hitting like this, he's a better defensive catcher than Tyler Stephenson, and he's a better hitter right now than Tyler Stephenson. He's a better catcher than Tyler Stephenson, at least as we sit here right now in early May. You could chalk that up as a hot take that could bother you. That's fine. I don't think it's that much of a hot take. He's hitting 324. He's hitting 324. And it's not like it's a small sample size of at-bats either. He's had 68 at-bats. 22 is 60. I mean, the guy's been unbelievable so far this season. I'm a big fan of Jose Trevino. We give out our April MVPs. I have Trevino right there. Trevino was so good that we forgot Tyler Stephenson was out. That's how dominant Trevino has been. And now that Stephenson is back, I'm so glad that the old school manager and Terry Francona says, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We're not taking him out of that role. Tyler Stephenson will catch. Tyler Stephenson will play DH. Maybe Tyler Stephenson could play some first base. That's another big debate I got into. Tyler Stephenson is your catcher of the future. But for right now, as long as Jose Trevino is hitting 300 baseball, I'm not touching it. I'm not messing with it, and I don't think that Terry Francona should either. I'm a big fan of that. The other thing, too, Tyler Stephenson's being called back up today. He wasn't very good in his rehab stint. He hit 130 in AAA. He had 23 at-bats, 3 hits. Now, he did draw 4 walks over his last 2 games, so he's seeing the ball well. He's disciplined at the plate. It would not be surprised for those of you who like to, place any money on those home run props. I would probably put money on Stephenson hitting a home run tonight because I'm calling out how poor of a hitter he was in AAA for his rehab stint. I would anticipate him hitting a home run tonight. That's just how that goes. But man, oh man, Tyler Stephenson in the lineup tonight as the DH. And I love that. I love Terry Francona not immediately throwing him a catcher. By the way, he was the catcher for Louisville. He was catching and hitting. It's not like, they have to ease him into it. He's already been catching. It's not that big a deal. Jose Trevino is this team's catcher. He is their primary catcher, and he should be, as far as I'm concerned. All right, we are live on Facebook, on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, live on ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. Ryan Strong. What up, Ryan? Ryan says, amen, Trevino should be starting, and he is tonight. Not just starting, but what I went back to earlier. Terry Francona is big on roles and big on knowing what your role is when you get to the ballpark. And Trevino knows, hey, I'm going to show up to the ballpark more nights than not. I'm going to be catching, and pretty much every night that I'm in the lineup, I'm going to be batting eighth. And that's exactly what Trevino is doing tonight. He's behind home plate. He's catching 400 green tonight, and he's eighth in the lineup. He's hitting .324 in the season with 9 RBIs, 3 home runs. He's third on this team in runs scored, by the way, which is wild to me. I never would have guessed in a million years back in January and February that Jose Trevino would be the third most productive player on this roster when it comes to runs scored. But that's how good of a hitter he is. That's how many times he's on base. And I love having that consistent production in the bottom third of the order. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. David Shaw says, good to see Tito come through yesterday. After for the first time, I blame him for using Diaz. I'm glad he used Diaz, Shaw. I'm glad he used Diaz, because if you can't use Diaz there, where can you use him? And I think that Francona's done a good job of allowing every player to get as many opportunities as they can, so they can't blame him or the organization for not giving them a fair shot. I mean, I think Jeimer Candelario is a prime example of that. Francona and the Reds gave him every opportunity. They gave him an entire month to prove that he could turn it around, and he couldn't. And they've cut ties with him, injured, on the IL. Right? They optioned him down. He goes on the IL. Jeimer Candelario can't sit there and blame Francona or the Reds for not giving him an opportunity or a shot. He was horrible. Alexis Diaz is in the same boat. Francona is not giving up on him prematurely. He was given every opportunity you can imagine. High leverage moments, low leverage moments, that, game on the line, game not on the line. I'm glad he did, Shaw, just because he had an opportunity to capitalize and he couldn't do it. Got blasted. He's out. So I'm fine with what the Reds decided to do there. How about Graham Ashcraft? Graham Ashcraft was fantastic yesterday. And then, of course, we got to see Luis May, the debut of him. I mean, the fact that you could go from Graham Ashcraft, who somehow was throwing upper 90s and, triple digits on the radar gun, and then you go from him right to Luis May, who was doing the same thing. He struck out his very first batter. I mean, he's been known to get that up to 103. He has some sick stuff. And if you have to go from Ashcraft throwing upper 90s to triple digits right into Luis May, and then you got Pagan ready there to close it all out. I mean, the bullpen is pretty good when it comes to this Reds team. Chad Kinster says, not sure if Stephenson is a good idea. You said this morning he was batting 190 in AAA. Well, I said 190. I was wrong. It's actually way worse. He's hitting 130 in AAA. He had 23 at bats, 3 for 23. He's in the lineup tonight. Shaw said, yeah, you should have used Diaz. Should have used Ashcraft when Diaz was there. Look, and people criticize Francona, and Shaw, I know you're not heavily criticizing him, but you weren't a fan of him using Diaz in that spot. The bottom line is again, established roles. Francona is big on, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Alexis Diaz, if he was healthy coming into the season, he would have gone out there to close out that very first game against the Giants on opening day. But he wasn't. There was no established roles, so he threw something against the wall to see if it worked out, and that's why Ian Jabot was out there on opening day trying to close out a big game, and he fumbled. Terry Francona never went back to him. Pagan has been fantastic in that role, has many, many saves at this point. So now that he's in that role, now that wasn't a role for Alexis Diaz anymore. Terry Francona is big on, if I have a guy that's doing something and he's very, very good at it right now, I'm going to keep him in that spot until he stops doing it. So Alexis Diaz, we got to find a new role for you. And some of these are, not as big a leverage moments as coming in to close out a game and secure a win. So yeah, if he couldn't secure that spot right there, it was unfortunate to give up back-to-back home runs. That should have been a win for the Reds on that first afternoon game against the Cards. And I panicked then because I knew we were going to see a rookie make his debut later that night. Wasn't a fan of that. But yeah, I understand. 518-1410. That's the number to call and jump in on the conversation. We're live on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page, live on ESPN Dayton's YouTube channel. So I talked about the lineup. It's an interesting lineup, and there's a new wrinkle in the lineup that I want to talk about as well. We're going to discuss that when we come back. Spencer Steer talked about how Terry Francona is one to give you an opportunity, a big opportunity to prove whether you can or cannot do something. Spencer Steer possibly hitting himself out of a drought, plus Spencer Steer getting a bigger role tonight. We'll talk about that when we come back. The Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. All right, and we are back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. We'll talk more in a bit about our next live show. We're going to be, stopping at different Frickers locations each and every month for the remainder of the calendar year. We appreciate those who come out and hang out with us. So we love taking the show out on the road. So we'll let you know our next location, our next Frickers location that we're going to be stopping at here in just a few weeks. I can't believe it's May already, but it is May. The Reds 17-15 at this point, and they got a series that they're kicking off tonight with, of course, the Washington Nationals, and Hunter Green will be on the mound. We're talking about Tyler Stephenson returning tonight for the Cincinnati Reds. I was very curious to see how Terry Francona was going to handle the return of Tyler Stephenson because of the dilemma that was created by, Jose Trevino, who is the best hitting catcher statistically in baseball right now. Their most consistent hitter. Again, 3 home runs, 9 RBIs. He scored 11 runs himself. I would say 13 runs or whatever it is now. I mean, he's one of the team leaders in runs scored, and that's your backup catcher. And that's a guy that is hitting in the 8th spot, in the bottom third of the order. I know people are probably thinking I'm obsessed with Jose Trevino. He's been my favorite player this season. Gavin Lux has been fun. Obviously, Ellie is my favorite Red. But like my favorite player this year, as far as the guy I've had the most fun watching, is Jose Trevino. I think he's been fantastic. He made you forget that Tyler Stephenson was out. Coming into the season, when I found out that Tyler Stephenson wasn't going to be ready to go to start, he would start out on the IL. That's a major blow. It stunk the fact that he wasn't in the lineup on opening day. We're really looking forward to seeing him in that lineup because he was one of their, if not their best hitter last year. I mean, we thought that this season the core guys were going to be Matt McClain, Ellie De La Cruz, Tyler Stephenson, and Spencer Steer. We were hoping that we were going to see Christian Encarnacion Strand take that next step. We were hoping that Will Benson was going to have something there to work with. We were hoping that Jake Fraley was going to take a step forward. We didn't get any of that. So when the Reds added a Jose Trevino and a Gavin Lux and an Austin Hayes and a Brady Singer, it was supposed to be Brady Singer was supposed to complement Hunter Green and Nick Lodolo. Gavin Lux, Jose Trevino, Austin Hayes were supposed to complement Matt McClain, Ellie De La Cruz, Spencer Steer, Christian Encarnacion Strand. It was supposed to be that type of relationship. It's been the other way around. Ellie's been so inconsistent throughout the year. He's on a hot streak right now. He still can't field a damn ground ball. That's a little frustrating, but that's an argument for still another day. Ellie has been, he's been complimenting them. Gavin Lux, Trevino, Austin Hayes, Brady Singer's been phenomenal in the rotation. Like everybody else has been complimenting them. And that's what's been cool to see this season. And if we can get to the point where Matt McClain hits himself out of the slump, if we can get to the point to where Ellie gets back to the dominant player that he was a year ago, still playing very good baseball right now, by the way. Spencer Steer, I think he's getting hot right now. We'll talk about that in a moment. But if he gets rolling at the same time of Lux and Trevino and Hayes and those guys, that's when this team takes that next step. That's when I think this team is as good as the Chicago Cubs. That's when I think that this team can compete with the majority of teams in baseball, not the Dodgers. Not the Dodgers. But either way, they do compete against the Dodgers pretty well. Their record against the Dodgers over the last couple of years, they have a winning record. I'll go pull that exact number, but it's been wild the fact that the Reds have had success against the Dodgers in recent years, but it is what it is. I've always said the reason the Reds do well against the Dodgers is because it's a young roster and they're rising up to the occasion. It's basically an audition for their next team, Ellie's next team, the Dodgers. It's an audition for them every time. But the lineup is out for tonight, and there's a lot in there. Tyler Stephenson is going to be the DH tonight. Trevino behind home plate catching tonight, batting in the 8th spot, as we talked about earlier. That's his role. That's the spot he hits in. Spencer Steer in the lineup, but at first base. Yes, Spencer Steer, who has been the DH all season, is now at first base because I knew that the trickle-down effect of calling Stephenson up. Do you carry 3 catchers? Charlie Goldsmith earlier in the week came on the show. He did not anticipate them carrying 3 catchers. He was a little surprised by that. They're carrying 3 catchers. So, okay, Tyler Stephenson, is he your primary catcher? If he's your primary catcher, what do you do with Trevino? Well, you bat him at the DH. Well, okay, you bat him at the DH, then what do you do with Spencer Steer? Oh, then you just don't play him. All right, that's a little bit of a problem. Okay, so now we have a little dilemma. Or you have Trevino catching, DH is obviously Tyler Stephenson, or he could play first base, as I've said a million times. Spencer Steer playing at first base is interesting. Is he healthy now? I think I think the guy's close to being healthy. Guys, have you paid attention to Spencer Steer? I mean, he just had a home run yesterday. In his last 10 games, Spencer Steer has multi-hit games in 5 of his last 10. He has reached base safely with a hit. 7 of his last 10 games, he has reached base safely with a hit. 5 of his last 10 games have been multi-hit games. He's had 3 home runs in that stretch. Spencer Steer's starting to heat up offensively with the bat in his hand. And now if he could contribute at first base, I think that's such a new layer for this team if they're getting another player stepping up to contribute like this. Spencer Steer, I hope that this is a good sign. I mean, he's been very, very good over the last small sample size of games, but if we're going to sit there and take a look at the 13 games that Austin Hayes dominated, look at what we're witnessing with Spencer Steer. 5 multi-hit games in his last 10 games, reached base safely with a hit in 7 of his last 10. He's hitting .290 over the last 2 weeks. I love what we're getting out of Spencer Steer at this moment. I'm surprised he's at first base. I'm going to be watching that like a hawk tonight. Is he going to produce at first base? That's the big question I have. Is he good enough to play at first base tonight? Healthy enough, I should say. That's the question I have. Lineup for tonight, again, the Reds and the Nationals, game 1, a 6:10 first pitch, an odd early time. I think the Reds have 2 6:10 first pitches this season. I think they have one with the Phillies in August, months from now, and then one tonight. So I don't know. Someone said it's because the fireworks. Well, the next 6:10 first pitch at GABP is against the Phillies, and it's on a Monday. So they don't do the fireworks on Monday. I have no clue. So if you know that, let me know. I have no clue why they would do it. But here's your lineup for tonight. Game 1 against the Nationals. TJ Friedl going to lead off and get the start in center field. Batting second, and at second base is Matt McClain. Ellie De La Cruz will start at short and bat third. At third base and batting fourth is Noelvi Marte. Santiago Espinal will get the start in left field and bat fifth. First base, Spencer Steer. He'll bat sixth. Seventh, the designated hitter, Tyler Stephenson. Batting eighth in his usual spot, Jose Trevino. And batting ninth is done in right field, of course. So there you go. That's where you see the absence of Hayes as far as that's concerned right there. But, man, this lineup, I mean, it looks good, but you got Stephenson in that lineup. That's why I want Hayes back as soon as possible, because a lineup that has Marte, who's hitting over 300 right now. De La Cruz is a stud, obviously. Friedel's been hitting close to 300 right now. Espinal's hitting over 300. Steer's been getting hot as of late. Trevino is a fantastic backup catcher, maybe the primary catcher as we sit here right now. And then you have Stephenson and Hayes. This is a dangerous lineup. This is a good-ass lineup. This is a lineup that you should be excited to tune in, to listen to the Reds, to tune in, to watch the Reds, to go to Great American Ballpark and watch the Reds live. This is actually a fun team. They're dysfunctional. They have a lot of issues, don't we all? I think this is a fun team to watch, man. That's why I'm so bummed about what we're witnessing right now with Austin Hayes. I hope he gets back quick, because I do think that this team could make a lot of noise. We'll see what happens. I'm Justin Kinner. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. We will turn our attention towards the NFL coming up in a moment. Earlier today, Austin Mock with The Athletic covers the NFL and college football. He released his NFL draft grades, and he wasn't so friendly with the grade for the Cincinnati Bengals. And we'll discuss that coming up. We'll have that interview for you later on in hour number 2 as well. But we'll talk a little football when we come back on the other side. All right. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. We'll be right back.
1,000,000% believe that the Dayton Flyers are afraid of the Wright State Raiders. That's why they come up with every excuse in the book not to play them.
There it is. The hottest take of them all. It's the Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers, live on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody, we welcome you back. The Justin Kinner Show, presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun food, sports, and spirits. NFL rookie minicamp dates were all put out earlier today. I mean, I think most people knew when, but nice little organized chart. So we know when the Bengals and the Browns all start to report to theirs. The Cincinnati Bengals, their NFL rookie minicamp will be May 9th. That's when they'll report for the Cincinnati Bengals. And as far as the Browns, they'll have theirs between the 9th and the 11th. We're getting closer and closer to that. The next big thing on the calendar for the NFL is the schedule release. It doesn't matter who you play. It matters when you play them. At least that's my philosophy. So I'll be very excited to see which teams are laid out for both as they get going. I think Cleveland, it's going to be one of those. You're going to pay attention to who's in front of them to start the season because everyone's going to be on Shedeur watch. You know, maybe Shedeur starts the season for Cleveland. I don't know. I think if you ask me right now, I do think that Shedeur probably should be the starter right off the bat. As much as I love Joe, it just depends. We're going to find out if the Browns are trying to win in 2025 or if this is simply Shedeur. What can you do? If you could be the guy, go be the guy, and then we could adjust our plan for the draft next year when we have 2 first-round draft picks. If you're not going to be the guy, well, you make our decision a lot easier. The problem is that's a lot of pressure. I feel like there's more pressure on the Browns than there is Shedeur in 2025. There's more pressure on the Browns to figure out what you have with Shedeur Sanders this upcoming season than the other way around. Because Cleveland has 2 first-round draft picks next year. And you assume that they acquired that second draft pick because they did not intend to go 2 quarterbacks in this past draft and that they were going to have enough ammo to pile some stuff up to maybe move up in next year's draft and get the quarterback that they truly want. Now, so if that's still the case, what you don't want to do is rush the development of Shedeur Sanders. It appear like he's not the guy. Then you draft a quarterback that doesn't work out next year, and then Shedeur hits with his new team. I don't know how he hits with the new team. You're going to have him under contract for a few years. I think Cleveland backed themselves into a corner that I'm going to be fascinated to see how they dig themselves out of. I don't know what the plan is. I feel like if the plan is Dylan Gabriel or Shedeur Sanders, I don't think quarterback is in play next year if you're Cleveland. You got to head into this season, unfortunately, for Joe Flacco, who I thought was going to be the starter, no questions asked. I don't know if it even makes sense for him to start a game for Cleveland. You could try to compete in 2025. I think this team can win 8-9 games, barely miss the playoffs, and then you're picking in the middle of the pack in the first round. You know, the Jaguars, who you traded that pick for them to get Travis Hunter, they could be picking anywhere between the back half of the draft or high in the top 10. I can't figure the Jaguars out either. But as far as I'm concerned, the Cleveland Browns, you drafted 2 quarterbacks. You have to know what you have with those 2 quarterbacks. And I don't know how you figure it out for both of them in one season when you have a veteran quarterback in Joe Flacco, who you've made the playoffs with and play. In fact, the Stefanski offense never looked better than it did with Joe Flacco running this offense. The offense, I mean, that Stefanski offense, I think the whole reason that people are still high on Stefanski is because we saw that with the right quarterback, that this offense, it's a pretty fun-ass offense to watch. It incorporates the home run plays. It incorporates the run game. It incorporates your tight ends. It really, play action. It involves everything. It gets everybody involved. It is a tough offense to game plan to stop because it's designed that way. They could beat you down the field. They could beat you with the run game and the short yardage game as well. They utilize their tight ends. Obviously, it's important for them to have a guy in the slot. I think Jerry Jeudy kind of popped out last year. Tillman's going to be great. I love that they went out and got Harold Fannin Jr., again, the tight end from Bowling Green, played 2 tight ends with him and David Njoku. This offense, when Joe Flacco led it, it proved to people, okay, Stefanski does have an offense that's explosive. It just needs the right ingredients. That ingredient is back. Joe Flacco can run this offense, and we saw David Njoku have his best game, or his best season ever was with Joe Flacco running this offense. He's still there. Jerry Jeudy, if he is the same receiver as he was last year, you're going to get the same production from him that the Browns got from Amari Cooper the year that Joe Flacco was here. That's what he needed to cook. Tillman, going to be an all-around great wide receiver who got a lot of the route trees that Amari Cooper was running. I think there's weapons there. And if Quinshon Judkins or Sampson, again, from Tennessee hit 8-9 wins, I don't think is that crazy with Joe Flacco leading the way. But the problem is if you're Cleveland and you win 8, 9, 10 games with Joe Flacco in this offense, especially with that defense, adding Mason Graham and getting the linebacker from UCLA, very talented secondary. The pass rush was already very good for Cleveland to begin with. Okay, you win 8, 9, 10 games. What are you winning? What do you prove? You might make the playoffs. You might flirt with the playoffs. But what are you winning? What are you proving? You drafted 2 quarterbacks in this draft that you won't start or play if you're winning with Joe Flacco. You have 2 picks next year in the first round that you would assume you would use for a quarterback, but how do you pick a quarterback if you don't even know what you have with the other 2? I just don't know what Cleveland's going to do. I do not want to be the guy that is screaming for them to not tank, but to go into a season knowing that you are not going to start the best quarterback to put you in position to win games. You have to approach this upcoming season as, all right, Shedeur, sink or swim. All right, Dylan Gabriel, sink or swim. I keep saying Shedeur Sanders, but that was your 5th-round pick. You clearly drafted Dylan Gabriel to be your rookie quarterback. So you don't draft him in the 3rd round and take reps away from him for the quarterback you took in the 5th round, when the reason you took him in the 5th round is because of the attitude and the fact that you didn't think he was good enough anyways. None of this makes sense. It's created such a chaotic scenario for Cleveland that I am just absolutely fascinated by to see how they are going to dig themselves out of this particular situation. I don't feel bad for him, but I also know that Shedeur, there's an aura about him, as we know. Dion's kid, yes, but there's a confidence, there's a swagger, there is a brand, there is a persona. There is something there that if he is the guy, it's going to be Baker Mayfield on steroids as far as the coverage that this team gets and the aura that this team has. Like, it's going to be very interesting, because if this team takes off with the youth movement that it just kind of led into, if the 2 running backs dominate, it does look like the Browns are moving on from Nick Chubb. So, I mean, again, Ryan Strong says, all I heard is that the Browns offense is bad. Look, they scored 14 points a game last year. Their offensive line took a major step back. They addressed offensive line in free agency. That defense, obviously, Zadarius Smith took a step back last year, so that was kind of the guy that they were hoping was going to be what Mason Graham's going to be at this point. They replaced him with Mason Graham, so I love that. In this defense, actually, when you look at how they finished the season, was actually a very, very good defense. It just wasn't complemented by, look, DTR. People keep bringing up this team averaged 14 points a game. Yeah, DTR was your quarterback. Cleveland tanked last year. I'm not saying that they were a sleeping giant offensively, but I also was at the game where they played Pittsburgh, and obviously Jameis Winston, when leading that offense, they could put points up. They could throw the football. They could put points up. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, they needed to see what they have with DTR. They were a much better team with, obviously, Jameis Winston at quarterback. They chose to go away from Jameis Winston to DTR to see what you have. You knew what you had. You had a horrible-ass quarterback. But that horrible-ass quarterback actually did more for Cleveland than what a more talented quarterback could have done, because he played bad enough to put them in position to get what they wanted, which was a high draft pick. They got it. They flipped it. They turned it into an additional first-round pick for next year. Cleveland's offense wasn't as bad as what people made it out to be. They made it that bad by going to DTR. You know, you don't have Nick Chubb, who got hurt again. You bring him back off a horrible injury, then you lose him for the season again. It snowballed. Amari Cooper, people could blame Deshaun Watson for Amari Cooper disappearing, but did you see what he did when he got to Buffalo? I think John Cena said it best. You can't see me. I couldn't see Amari Cooper. People could blame Deshaun. Deshaun can get a blame for a lot of things. Cleveland could be blamed for a lot of things. At the end of the day, Amari Cooper, he regressed. The number one, weapon they had in the pass game, he stunk. Bye. He disappeared. Your number 1 running back, one of the best running backs in the NFL, at one point was one of the best running backs in the NFL. second season in a row where you lose him for the season. Like David Njoku out for most of last season. Of course, DTR, your quarterback, of course that offense stunk. But when healthy, Jerry Jeudy, Tillman, David Njoku, Harold Fannin Jr., you just went out and got Quinshon Judkins, a revamped offensive line. And if any of these quarterbacks can throw the football, this is a significantly better offense than it was a year ago. How does it stack up against the rest of the league? It's not a Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins offense, but it very well could be a better, more overall offense than the Bengals if they can incorporate the run game and just get an average production out of their pass game. They will be more balanced. I think they will be one of the more balanced offenses in the league. Explosive, that's up to what production they get out of their quarterback. Is Shador going to be the Jaden Daniels quarterback that Washington got? Is he going to be the C.J. Stroud quarterback that the Texans got? Texans in last place the year before. You get C.J. Stroud, you win the division, win a playoff game. Washington, one of the worst teams in football. You get Jaden Daniels, a couple pieces in the offseason, compete with the Eagles, at the top of the division. Not just win one playoff game, win a few playoff games, and almost got to a Super Bowl. Cleveland could be that team. Cleveland could be that team that we saw from the Texans. You get your quarterback, it all takes off. The Redskins or the Washington football team. What the hell are they? The Commanders. Sorry. They get their quarterback, boom. It turns everything around. If Shador's the guy, if Dylan Gabriel's the guy, it could all turn around. That's really all that matters. And if Cleveland does hit on one of these picks, on one of these quarterbacks, and you have 2 first-round picks next year, and you have Caleb Downs that you can go get, I mean, there's going to be a lot of weapons that the Browns can get with those first-round picks next year. And hell, you know what? I would trade one of those back, try to get a first for the next year, and try to go get Jeremiah Smith. I mean, again, it all comes down to how creative can they be with these 2 quarterbacks. They've just created a mess. 937-518-1410. Let's go to the phones. We got Shaw waiting. Shaw, you're on live. How's it going?
Not bad, how about you?
Another day in paradise. Happy Friday.
Yes, happy Friday. That was scrolling through the phone to call you and couldn't realize it had been a month since I called.
That's been
a
a
little
minute.
Weird. Yeah, it has. Funny you bring up the Browns because that was kind of what I was hoping you were going to get into. I've never been more confused by a draft in my entire life. Starts out hot, starts out very sweet for me specifically, especially a Michigan fan. I agree with trading down. I like the Graham pick. I like everything you guys did up until my confusion. And it's about what you just said. The Dylan Gabriel pick is a great pick, I think, until you draft Shador. Drafting Shador at that spot you draft him, I think, is a good pick. But you drafted Dylan Gabriel beforehand. Those 2 picks make absolutely no sense to me. I have no explanation for it. I can't figure it out. I've tried to figure it out. Done a bunch of reading to figure it out. They don't know what's going on. I don't know. The whole thing confuses me. Moving down south, moving down 71, that is bar none, in my opinion, and I know the guys down there, Chatterbox, they completely disagree with me. That is bar none probably the worst draft that Cincinnati could have had, giving the parameters of where they were drafting this year and the draft board that was laying in front of them. That is, you can't draft that pick. You can't. Not with the holes that.
Are you talking about Shamar Stewart? You talking about the first-round pick?
Mm-hmm.
Or are you talking about just the draft in general? But Shamar Stewart, most notably,
Shamar Stewart mainly, but the entire and then you overreach in round 2, and then you overreach again in round 3. I like the back end of the draft that you did. You did what you had to do to basically just get the positions of need at that point. But in the first round with Stewart, it just makes no sense to me. You have a board laid out completely in front of you. You have the pick of the litter at that point. Basically, anything you choose is going to be a great pick, and you choose the one guy, the one pick that is the biggest question mark in the entire first round and probably should have dropped to the second round. I understand others' point that the expectations and his talent is unlimited and yada, yada, yada. But my point of the matter is you had 4 years to produce on the field and you produced 4.5 sacks. You can come at me with, oh, well, the pressures are high, and he was almost there. Yeah, and if a frog had wings, he wouldn't bump his behind. I'm tired of all the excuses of trying to make that pick a good pick when I don't care the parameter you look at. It's not a good pick. It's just, in my opinion. I don't know. What were your thoughts? I don't remember.
It's like I do understand, and again, based on how the Bengals draft, they did what they did. They didn't do anything uncharacteristic, so they don't feel they did anything wrong because that's how they draft. It's all about the measurables, and I think it's lazy how they do it. To be honest, they just look at measurables and draft you based off that. I think that's lazy, and I think that speaks to the fact that they also have the smallest scouting department in the National Football League. So
Correct.
It's one of those where they don't venture out too far and they don't get a full grasp of the talent that's out there around the country. So they have to kind of rely on, just measurables. It's easy to just look at the measurables of all these guys around the league and then just base it off of that and pick from that. I think it's lazy. Shamar Stewart, he could turn into one of the best pass rushers in football. It'll be a great story, but it's those types of things that bail out an organization that makes a lot of bad decisions the way that they do. I agree with you. Obviously, they could have been more aggressive and traded back and probably got a much better, to be honest, they could have traded back and got Pierce or whatever. Better guys were taken after, I guess is my problem. If the Ravens were willing to be able to take the kid from Marshall, why couldn't the Bengals? If the Eagles or whoever it was, who Atlanta takes Pierce, why couldn't you take Pierce? That's always been my big thing on that. Like, someone's going to take these guys. So many people passed on Shador. So I don't mind Cleveland taking him. They passed on him a few times, but it's like someone was going to take him. Why not it be you? Someone takes him and it works out. It could, that should have been you that took him. Taking a chance on a guy that wasn't as talented in college versus a talented guy in college that may not work out. I'd much rather go at the higher ceiling than the big unknown. And the big unknown is Shamar Stewart in that draft. And the only way that could be a successful draft is if he does pan out, because if he's a bust, and you only get one guy producing out of that, I don't understand. How many guys have to hit out of a draft for it to be successful, by the way? Like, you got 6 picks. How many of those guys have to hit for the Bengals to have had a successful draft?
In my opinion, at least half of them. That's how I look at it. If you have 6 picks, 3 of them would have to pan out. And the way I look at it, your first rounder and probably the second rounder need to be guys that are producing for you right away. And I don't need to be drafting a guy who is a project who could possibly, maybe, and I heard this a while ago, and it rings true to me, and I don't care what sport it is. Congratulations, he's talented. Everybody in the draft is talented. All talent does is get you fired. That's all it does. And to draft consistently, he's a 5-star, and he's from a big school, and we got to draft him. This is the spot. That's what his measurables say. What does your team say? What do your holes on your team say? And my bigger thing is, and I know, and some people are going to disagree with this, and I understand it. I guess I understand the disagreement. But you're sitting there, and you know the Eagles are behind you, and you know the Ravens are behind you. 2 teams that you're fighting to get to where they are, especially the Ravens because they're in your division. Everybody and their sister had Stone going to the Ravens. You're sitting there in the draft at 17. You need safeties. You know the Ravens are drafting Stone if he's there. Why not take him? It's a win-win at that point. You need a safety. You just got the best safety in the draft, arguably. And you're keeping a kid from the Baltimore Ravens that you know is going to turn into a stud. And then what the Eagles did at the end, another position that the Bengals needed, and then the Eagles go up and they draft him. I understand it's not the traditional thinking of how you would draft and stuff like that. You need to be drafting for your needs, and I understand all that. But if the need is there for your team, the guy on the board is there that fills that need, and it also takes a kid away from the team that you're going to be fighting against in your division and overall for a Super Bowl. That probably goes back to the scouting department and everything else like that. Enough about football. I wanted to get to the Reds because that's what you started out with. That's what we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, we have 3 minutes. 3 minutes, by the way.
Okay, yeah, I'll make it quick. The Diaz thing, I agree with you and I disagree with you. That's what you read over because what I put on Facebook. hard to put everything into words on what I was talking about there. I agree with you that Diaz is used in that leverage situation. Why I disagree with it is Diaz has been horrible all season long. That was a game that you needed to win, and it was a winnable game because it was 1-0 going into the ninth. He's been horrible in those leverage situations all year long. The reason I put it slightly on Tito is the fact that he knows that better than anybody that we're talking to right now. You, me, anybody else. Why not use somebody that is in that leverage situation this season, not what he's been doing in the past, this season? Why not use a guy that's been dynamic in a leverage situation? Use Diaz in a situation that's not so leveraged, and you can go, all right, if he stinks, we're going to go ahead and send him down anyways, which is what he's been showing anyhow. That's why I disagree with that one there. Everything else about the Diaz thing, sending him down, being done with him, all that other stuff, I am 100% with you on that. That's all. And last thing with the Reds, I was pessimistic as all pessimistic before the season started. I'm calling in here to tell you today that this team can't explain it, don't really know why, but has me more excited than a Reds team in probably 10 to 15 years. Yes, I'm a Braves fan too, and both teams kind of look very similar to me, and both teams are kind of waking up at the same time, but I will say this right now. I give the Reds the advantage over the Braves because of the pitching staff and the bullpen. That bullpen right now, especially with that young kid they showcased yesterday for the first time, that bullpen could be absolutely dynamic, and it's been dynamic so far through the season. I know you're up against it. I'm going to get out of here. Go Blue. Peace.
All right, good. Appreciate the call, Shaw. Again, 937-518-1410 if you guys want to jump in on the conversation. A lot to unpack there. The Reds do have a different field this year. I do think it's because the Reds actually have MLB players in this lineup. Keep in mind, the Reds have been rebuilding for quite some time. Even when they did get good in 2020, I mean, they got good, not good. They put a good veteran roster together in 2020, but it was just wonky. Now, COVID happened, and then, you come out of that, and they didn't really know if they were rebuilding or trying to retool with the pieces that they had. But when you had Moustakas not producing and Shogo Akiyama wasn't very good, so you flamed out there. You had really good, an outfield with Castellanos and Jesse Winker. You had, obviously, Luis Castillo, but there was nothing coming up through the system. They had a horrible farm system. They were in no man's land. They had to rebuild. And they hit rebuild again. It got exciting a couple years ago with all the rookies hitting at once, but that looked like a team that had exciting young rookies. And then when things went bad, it looked like a team that had rookies. This team doesn't have as much youth as this is year 3 for Ellie and McClain and Steer and these guys. These guys have been around a minute. These guys are borderline veteran players. They've been around. So I think that's what's different about this team, especially when you go add Gavin Lux and you add Trevino and you add these MLB ready players. This team just feels different, and I think that's what it has a lot to do with. We did get an update on Austin Hayes and how long of an IL stint we can believe this to be. So we'll talk about that when we come back. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers.
ESPN Radio. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits.
All right, and we are back. The Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers live here on 1410 ESPN Radio. Reds have a 6:10 start time tonight. Hunter Green going to be on the mound. Game 1 against the Nationals. Reds coming off of a split against the Cardinals. We spent a lot of time in that first hour on the Cincinnati Reds. It's been a little bit of an up and down stretch for the Reds as of late. Austin Hayes goes on the IL. That was announced earlier today. He goes on the IL. Tyler Stephenson comes off the IL and had 23 at-bats, going 3 of 23 at AAA Louisville, and hitting 130 in that stretch. He did draw 4 walks over his last couple of games. So, when he was interviewed, he said he's seeing the ball real well. He actually feels good at the plate. Obviously, hadn't made good contact there, but feels excited and ready to go as he makes his season debut with the Reds coming up later on tonight. Batting 7th in the lineup. He is the DH tonight. And a trickle-down effect of that, because he's in the DH spot, Spencer Steer is going to get the start at first base. And then, of course, you have obviously you have, when it comes to the catcher, you're going to go to who I said was the April MVP when it comes to that too, and the catcher they got from the Yankees at this point. So I like the depth that this team has and the versatilitiness that they have to be able to move some pieces around. But Jose Trevino is just a guy at this point that I think has to be the everyday catcher. As far as the primary catcher, I shouldn't say everyday. There's not an everyday catcher, but I'm glad Stevenson's back, and hopefully we can ignore what he did or didn't do with AAA as far as that goes. And if Austin Hayes can come back relatively soon, that's going to be huge for this team as well, because now you have Austin Hayes, who's a power bat. Tyler Stephenson's a power bat. Obviously, Lux has been fantastic with the bat in his hand. You have Elly De La Cruz. The question I have is the Matt McClain thing. I do find it rich that the same people that got mad at me for questioning Elly De La Cruz when he went about a good 2-week stretch, 3-week stretch of playing. But remember, he played. I mean, Elly didn't start playing well the last couple of weeks. He played the majority of April very poor. Elly was not good for the majority of this month, or the first month of the season. He's gotten hot over the last 12 games. So that obviously that's a nice little stretch where he's turned it around. But when I was critical of Elly, everyone said, "Oh, that's ridiculous. He's going to be fine." I'm like, well, I'm sure he's going to be fine, but in the meantime, he kind of stinks. He was hitting below 200. He had like 6 or 7 errors in that stretch. He wasn't very good in that stretch. He's playing well now, and that's all that matters. But Matt McClain's a problem. Matt McClain is a concern. I think someone in the chat had sent that in a little bit ago. Steve Stetler, he messaged into the show on the Justin Kinner Show Facebook page. He said, "Do you think it's time for McClain to be sent down to AAA? He's 3 for his last 34. He's not helping this team at this point." Shaw says Elly still stinks in the field. Yes, Elly does still stink in the field right now. He's not, but the advanced analytics will tell you he's playing great at shortstop. That's where analytics miss me. I mean, if I'm watching the game, he's not good at shortstop, but the advanced analytics tell you that he is. It's just wild how the people that use the numbers to sound smart can say the most ridiculous things and back it up because, hey, the numbers. Elly's not playing good at shortstop, guys. Like, I think we can, is there time for him to get better? Were we patient with Barry Larkin, who had a lot of errors? Yes. I mean, they always like to go back and show you all the errors that a lot of the former, Hall of Fame players committed early in their careers. And that's great. That's fine. But if he doesn't, how many years in a row is he going to play like this before you start to admit that maybe you're wrong and not the other way around? But that's an argument for another day. Matt McClain, I don't know. This was my concern about Matt McClain coming into the season. I had a concern about Matt McClain because he didn't even play a full rookie season. Guys, he technically hasn't even played 162 games in his career yet. He was anointed as like a top 10 second baseman in baseball. Everyone was just drooling over Matt McClain. And I'm like, look, I see it. I see how good defensively he is. Yesterday, I mean, the Cowboy was just going on and on that he may not be contributing with his bat, but he's playing at a Gold Glove level. And I'm like, yeah, I completely get that. But there's a difference between not hitting well and even having pitchers saying, yeah, I think the Reds can get more production from putting a pitcher in that 2-hole in the lineup than what they're getting from Matt McClain. It is hard to watch. I know he hit a home run. I know he's gotten a hit or two here and there over the last week or two, but the guy's not been good. And we just automatically assume that the second base spot in this middle infield is locked because Matt McClain, he's the second baseman of the future. People started the Reds need to start negotiation talks with him now. Can he get better? Absolutely. We've seen him play way better baseball than this. It's weird because he started the season hot. That series against the Giants, he hit like 3 home runs or whatever right off the bat. And now has just been, it's been horrific ever since. Is he still injured? This goes back to the lack of trust that I have in the Reds front office and how they handle injuries. Is he still injured and banged up? I don't know. But like I said earlier, Matt McClain takes off and Stephenson, he gets off to a hot start in his debut tonight with the Reds, and you get Austin Hayes back relatively soon, hopefully. Now there's something special with this lineup. Now they have something to work with. I already like the lineup. I already like the production they're getting. But Matt McClain, something has to give with him. He has to figure this out. So I don't know what to make of Matt McClain. He's a fan favorite. People love him. Obviously, Francona keeping him in that 2 spot. I said earlier, I loved the fact that he doesn't tinker with the lineup a lot. He doesn't like to move guys up and down the lineup unless he has to. It is getting to the point to where it's hard to justify keeping Trevino in that 8 spot and Matt McClain in that 2 spot. Matt McClain's hurting the top half of the order. The top half of the order is pretty good. TJ Friedel's very, very good. I do think at some point you might have to consider, if you're going to keep McClain out there, keep him in the lineup because of his defense. You need to get him out of the top 3, the 2 spot in the lineup. I think Gavin Lux needs to be. If you had TJ Friedel, Gavin Lux, Elly De La Cruz, Austin Hayes, Tyler Stephenson, and then you go right into, let's say, Jose Trevino at that point, if you're going to tinker with the lineup, 1 through 6, 1 through 7, there's not an easy out in that lineup with the way that these guys have been playing right now. Friedel to Lux to Elly, and then you go right into Austin Hayes hitting behind him, and then you go into Tyler Stephenson hitting 5th, and then you have, obviously, Trevino hitting 6th. That's still a lot of production that you're getting up and down this order. And I already love what they're getting from most of these guys too. Can they keep it going? That type of thing. We talked about the Reds lineup a little bit ago. As far as that's concerned, the Reds did release that. We'll go ahead and take a look at that again. The fact that you have, at this point too, Friedel, McClain, and Elly De La Cruz, your 1, 2, and 3 hitters. Nothing major there. Noelvi Marte, Espinal, and Steer. Your 4, 5, and 6 hitters, and 7, 8, and 9 belong to Stephenson, Trevino, and Dunn. But imagine a lineup, like I said, if Francona, who I'm being a hypocrite because I said earlier I like that he doesn't tinker with the lineup. But if you were going to tinker with the lineup based on who's producing right now to maximize that lineup, like I said, Friedel, Lux, De La Cruz, your 1, 2, and 3 hitters. I would love, when Austin Hayes is healthy, I'd put Austin Hayes in that 4 spot. I'd put Stephenson in that 5 spot. I would put Noelvi Marte, in that 6 spot. Obviously, Jose Trevino, I'd put it at 7. Spencer Steer, I'd put it at 8. And then, kind of float around a little bit with that 9th spot. But this lineup's way deeper than we thought. Way deeper than we thought. Last thing here on the Reds before we get to our interview with Austin Mock from The Athletic. We're going to talk Bengals with him coming up here in a few. But the bottom line is we do have an update here when it does come to Austin Hayes. So Charlie Goldsmith tweeted out about 15 minutes ago that Austin Hayes went on the IL today, but he's still taking batting practice today. So that's good. He's taking batting practice today. Terry Francona tells Charlie Goldsmith that Hayes is doing well and that this has the potential to be a minimum IL stint. So he could be back as early as next week. I think they need him back next week. They need him healthy, but they need him back next week. When you got 4 with the Atlanta Braves who are catching fire now, and then you got to go on the road to play Houston, yeah, they're going to need Austin Hayes back next week. Hopefully Stevenson's swinging a hot bat. Things are going to be very interesting over the next week, but they can't get to next week's important stretch of games if they crap the bed against the Washington Nationals, and hopefully that's not the case because they have Hunter Green on the mound tonight. All right, you're at home. It's a 6:10 first pitch. I think it's going to be a good crowd at Great American Ballpark. It's the City Connect night, so it's going to be a fun one. I think the Reds get a big win tonight to kind of bounce back after splitting with the Cardinals and to get a big series win heading into a tough road stretch where you got to play the Braves and Houston back-to-back series, 7 games total. There you go. And keep in mind, too, like that's a tough stretch next week. You got 4 at Atlanta, 3 at Houston. You get an off day on the 12th, which is a Monday. Then it kind of gets a little easier for a bit, right? Then you got 3 with the White Sox, Cleveland's solid, so you're going to play Cleveland. But then you got 3 at Pittsburgh. You got Kansas City coming up around the corner. Important series with the Cubs. But there's some winnable series sprinkled in there with some competitive ones coming up as well. We're going to learn a lot about the Reds over the next week or two as far as, is this team good enough to sustain this? We'll find out very, very soon. It's the Justin Kinner Show presented by Frickers. Frickers, your home for fun, food, sports, and spirits. Austin Mock, he, of course, is with The Athletic. He covers the NFL. He covers college football. He gave out his NFL draft grades. He didn't give out the most friendly grade to your Cincinnati Bengals, of course. He gave out a very good grade to the Cleveland Browns, and we talked about all of that earlier today on Off the Bench. If you missed that interview, don't worry. We have that coming up for you next right here on the Justin Kinner Show. Again, talking Bengals, Browns, AFC North. We even talked Will Howard. What is the likelihood that Will Howard hits for the Pittsburgh Steelers? What if they just drafted their potential franchise quarterback? We'll discuss all of that and more with Austin Mock of The Athletic coming up next.